This is Professor Mercer Bullard, Director of the Business Law Institute at the University of Mississippi School of Law. This video provides an introduction to dilution, that is, stock dilution in the corporate context. It is intended for law students and lawyers. We will address two kinds of dilution. First, we will cover the ownership dilution that normally occurs when a company issues new shares. Issuing new shares presents risk because it may affect who has voting control of the company. We will also consider what we will call economic dilution. Economic dilution occurs when new shares are issued at too high or too low a price, and shareholders experience an economic loss as a result. Lawyers play a crucial role in managing the risk for their clients of both kinds of dilution. Let's start with a business with net assets that are worth $10 that has issued a total of 10 shares. It has 10 shares outstanding. It needs to raise cash to finance a major expansion, so it plans to sell or issue new shares. The company sells 5 new shares for a total of $5. There are now 15 shares outstanding, and the company is worth $15. In this case, ownership dilution has occurred because the owners of the original 10 shares have a smaller ownership interest than before. The original shareholders' 10 shares, which represented 100% control of the company, now represent only a 2/3 stake. They still control the company, but not as decisively as before. In fact, a new shareholder who makes such a large investment is likely to insist on some say in how the business is run. This ownership dilution may be particularly problematic if, for example, the 10 shares are owned by more than one shareholder. Let's assume they're owned by shareholders A, B, and C with 3, 3, and 4 shares, respectively. If you represented shareholder C, you would be concerned that the new shareholder might be able to take control of the company. There are 15 shares outstanding, and typically each share will have 1 vote. This means that the new shareholder and A could combine their shares and cast 8 votes, while B and C would have only 7. The new shareholder and A could take control of the company. In this transaction, issuing new shares could have the effect of triggering a change in control of the business. This is one risk of ownership dilution when a company issues new voting stock. If you represent a party to this transaction, you need to ensure that they understand and accept the voting power they will have after the transaction has been completed. Although this transaction results in ownership dilution, it does not result in any economic dilution. Let's look at the pre-transaction situation to see why no economic dilution occurs. The company is worth $10 and there are 10 shares outstanding. That means that each share is worth $1. If the company sells new shares for $1, neither the original shareholders nor the new shareholder will be diluted. In our example, the new shareholder contributes $5 to the company, which increases its total value to $15. Her investment accounts for 1/3 of the company's value. In return for her $5, she receives 5 shares, or 1/3 of the company's shares. She accounts for 1/3 of its value. She receives shares worth 1/3 of the company. No one is economically diluted because they are in the same economic position after the transaction as they were before. The original shareholders still own shares worth $10. The new shareholder contributed $5 in cash and received shares worth $5. Let's look at what happens if the new shareholder pays too little for her shares. Imagine that she pays only $2 for her 5 shares. The total value of the company is increased to $12, of which she has contributed 1/6. She still receives 5 shares, or 1/3 of the company's outstanding shares. She added 1/6 of the company's value, but took 1/3 of its shares in return. The value of her stake is 1/3 of $12, or $4, twice what she paid for her shares. The original shareholders have seen the total value of their shares decline from $10 to $8. They've experienced economic dilution. The amount of the new shareholders' gain of $2 is matched by an equal loss by the original shareholders. If you represent the original shareholders, you need to protect them against this kind of dilution. Economic dilution can also adversely affect the new shareholder. Imagine that she paid $14 for 5 shares. She would now account for more than half the company's $24 in net assets, but would own only 1/3 of its shares. Her 1/3 stake would be worth only $8, leaving her with a $6 loss. Her $6 loss is the other shareholders' $6 gain. Their shares are now worth $16. When dilution occurs because shares are sold at too high a price, the shares are called watered stock, named after the practice of having one's cattle drink a lot of water just before they're sold at market in order to artificially increase their weight. The reason that a shareholder might pay too much or too little for new shares is that the investment may be based on an inaccurate valuation of the company. Let's see how this plays out in practice. Consider the same transaction, except that the company inflated its value. The company's management claims that the company is worth $28 rather than $10. The new shareholder pays $14 for 5 shares. After her $14 investment, the company would be worth $42, assuming that the pre-transaction value of the company is actually $28. Her 5 shares would be worth 1/3 of $42, or $14. She invested $14 and received shares worth $14. She does not experience any economic dilution. However, the company is actually worth $10 when she makes her investment. Her $14 investment accounts for more than half of its value after the transaction, but she ends up owning only 1/3 of a $24 company. She invested $14 and ended up with shares worth $8. She purchased watered stock, that is, overpriced stock. Let's consider what happens when the company is undervalued. We will assume that the company undervalued its stock at only 40 cents a share for a total value of $4. The new shareholder pays $2 for her 5 shares. The value of her 1/3 stake in the company is equal to the $2 she contributed. No economic dilution has occurred, assuming that the pre-transaction value of the company is actually $4. However, the correct value of the company is $10. Her investment represents only 1/6 of the company's value after the transaction, but she owns 1/3 of its shares. The value of her shares is 1/3 of $12, or $4, twice the $2 she paid for them. The original shareholder shares are worth only $8. Her $2 gain is their $2 loss. The original shareholders have experienced economic dilution because they sold shares for less than their value. This is why the pre-transaction value, which is often called the pre-money value, is so important. The best way to prevent, at least minimize, economic dilution is to ensure that the pre-money valuation is as accurate as possible. If the valuation is incorrect, someone is going to be diluted, and you don't want it to be your client. You need to work closely with the accountants and the others who are doing the valuation to ensure that the number of shares issued reflects the correct value. You also need to have a fundamental understanding of valuation methods. This video has covered the basics of ownership dilution and economic dilution. Ownership dilution usually occurs when companies issue new shares. The issue for the lawyer for the deal is the effect that issuing new shares has on the voting power of each shareholder, and particularly on control of the company. Economic dilution need not occur when a company issues new shares. It will occur when shares are sold at too low a price, which dilutes the value of the original shareholder's interests. It will also occur when shares are sold at too high a price, called watered stock, and the new shareholder is diluted. Both ownership and economic dilution create significant risks for business clients, and lawyers play a crucial role in protecting against or minimizing these risks.